Hello. I'm glad you're interested in Have Faith. It's something I think is very timely. I'm so excited about it. I am sure it's a great alternative for you uh, in terms of a in-home confirmation prep program. Let me take you through it. So here's Have Faith. Notice the cover. It says a sustaining the spirit for confirmation beyond, but it says it's a candidate and sponsor resource. Have Faith was designed so that candidates could do work on their own in their home, but not alone. You get to check in with them whenever you want. Your catechist can check in, and more than anything else, you're going to find that the sponsor is going to be actively engaged through this program. There's going to be real faith sharing taking place. Let me take you through it. There's three parts. The first part of Have Faith takes people through a self-assessment of their spirituality. This is something I worked on in my doctorate when I found out that adolescents tend to land on a spectrum of three different spiritual dimensions. One's vertical in their relationship with the transcendent, right? Some are very horizontal, where their emphasis is on doing good and being kind. And some have a spirituality that's focused on how it helps them cope with the stuff inside. So the first thing this thing, Have Faith, does is allows the candidate to take their own self-assessment and score it. So they get to see what their most dominant spiritual dimension is and what might be their least developed spiritual dimension. I'll show you that in a minute. Part two focuses on their Catholic identity. Here's where we test their knowledge. We introduce them to 9 characteristics of Catholicism that separates us out from other Christian denominations. We have some fun with a parable, but I'll show you some of that in a minute too. And then the third part of Have Faith, a whole third of this confirmation prep program focuses on the concept that discipleship is the expectation and the calling for the spiritual life beyond confirmation. Candidates are also, candidates develop in a structured fashion, and I'll show it to you in a minute, their own spiritual growth plan. Guys, what we're basically doing here is we're giving the candidates sort of the keys to the car for their own spiritual growth as they prepare for confirmation and beyond. And so there are 3 different exercises where they start to pull together their own spiritual growth plan based on what they are going through in this program. And here's probably one of the most exciting parts of Have Faith. The sponsor is doing the exact same thing. So each candidate gets 2 books, if you will, one for themselves and one they send to their sponsor. There's 3 in each, since there's 3 parts, at the end of each part, there are 3 structured conversations that take place between the sponsor and the candidate. What you have here is safe, authentic faith sharing, engagement after each part. I think this sets a precedent. I think this possibly sets up a relationship with some of these candidates and their sponsors that will continue beyond confirmation. The other thing about that is it allows a candidate to select someone who they have already recognized as a person of faith. In these days, we may not be gathering candidates and sponsors together, so it may not be a requirement that a sponsor has to be from the parish, in the area, in town, but it opens up a whole possibility of the candidate able to select an uncle, an aunt, a former neighbor who means something to them, who they recognize as a person of faith, and that's the person that will participate with the candidate in these activities. And I'll show you how that happens here. And excuse the primitive nature of this, but here's an example of the opening spiritual life profile. Candidates love this. This allows them to self-assess. And in the end, if you can see down at the bottom right, they are able to see whether they are mostly vertical, mostly horizontal, mostly internal, right? And from there, they can begin to decide, do I want to cultivate some of my least developed dimensions? You'll notice down here is a bullets on the right that's a prompt to go online for a song. I'm going to get to this later, but my initial intent here was to say, can we make this interactive? Can it not just be kids working with this material, checking in and sharing faith with their sponsor, but could they also go online as another form of catechetics? But I'm going to open it up for you in just a minute. In part one, besides this focus on helping kids get a sense of their own spirituality, we introduced them to the notion of vocational callings. This is work that my wife and I have done a lot with. And so we've come to believe that there are 3 vocational callings. And this was like prior to Pope Francis's Christus Vivit. And he's like, yeah, go there. We want to talk about vocations with young people. That just came out recently. This allows you to be right on top of that. Here's an example of, at the end of part 1, here's their first attempt to develop their own spiritual growth plan. They fill this stuff out, they begin to work on it. It's guided. They don't really need you. They don't need a catechist. What they do need to do is they need to be able to make sure they complete this work. All right. Let me see if I can do this for you. Yeah. So it leads them through the process of, hey, here's how you go through it. Here's how you go through it. Start making your own sense of things. Okay. Part 2, we get into Catholic identity, and I love this. So the first thing we do when we enter into Catholic identity in part 2 is we allow them to assess their religious knowledge, right? And of course, we start with the premise, I know. You've already had all this. You've had all this. So here's like 27 questions. The answers, for the most part, are all provided, but not exactly. So it teaches them how to score themselves, have some fun with this, but we'll see. And you allow them to see, have they really had all this already? This is really important. If you want to enhance this program on your own, I'm going to show you how. You may want to dig in right here and add a little bit more about religious knowledge of the faith. But this is how we begin Catholic identity. There's some other things we do with this. I introduced them to 9 characteristics that distinguish Catholicism from other Christian faiths. Then they get to identify what's their favorite, which one has been most meaningful to them. So the program establishes this dialogue, right, between the content and their own journey of faith. In this, I also include a comparison between the Nicene Creed and this really oversimplified beige creed that I call the modern creed. I made it up. And so it goes side by side, and they get to see how the Nicene Creed has so much more detail to it, so much more specificity. And the more modern creed is just generic beige, and they get to evaluate that. You get to work with that. I include a parable of an alien who drops in the parable, it drops in to a junior retreat and asks the participants on retreat a question. And the parable goes nuts after that. But they ask the question, what do you people, you Catholics, what do you do in this building on Sunday or Moon Day or whatever day that is? And the parable shares the responses that the retreatants give to the alien as they try to explain the Catholic faith to the alien, who then is very concrete and is not getting it at all. Anyway, that's kind of a fun thing. And of course, there's a moment to ask our favorite question: why go to Mass? It's up front. I've tested this 100 times. It's in plain English. It's helpful to kids. They seem to appreciate it, but we don't want to go too far without addressing this question. Now, I want to go down to the lower right. Here's a prompt to go online to listen to some music that might apply to going to Mass. Okay. If I was doing this today, this is where I would, if I were you, this is how I would begin to insert additional material that you feel is important, that you want to emphasize. Give them a link or send them a note that says, on page 24, instead of the going online for such and such, go to this video. Here's a video by a YouTube video by someone you trust, who knows young people, who's doing something on why go to Mass. Or when I share 9 distinguishing characteristics of Catholicism, one of them is sacramentality. You might have a video that you love that's youth friendly. Now, it can't be something from an adult who's doing theological education for adults, right? So you want to make sure it's age appropriate, but you can give them a link to something on sacramentality, or one of our Catholic commitment to justice. Maybe you want to give them a link to your bishop's recent document on racism, right? But here's the way you can enhance the experience and the catechesis that's taking place at home for these candidates. Here's an example of after part 2 on Catholic identity. Here's a second exercise they have in developing their spiritual growth plan. Let me see if I can help you with this. This asks them, right, to make a Y in this circle, and in the 3 parts of the Y, right, label 1K for knowledge, 1A for attitudes, 1B for behavior. So this is a way for them to say, okay, here's some knowledge I want to pursue. I want to gain some more knowledge about, or here are some attitudes I'd like some more information about in terms of what's the church's attitude, or what's the Catholic attitude toward this and that, or how can I become more respectful for, learn more about, accept, appreciate, etc. And then there's a B for behavior. So young people are allowed in part 2 to start focus on any knowledge, attitudes, or behaviors that they feel is important and worth pursuing. Here's your peek at sponsored conversation number 2. So it's already structured. They're told to get in touch with their sponsor, who's doing the same work that the young people are doing, and to share faith, share notes about the following, right? What's the point of the parable? What's one thing you guys like best about the Nicene Creed? What's your favorite Catholic season or symbol? Why do you like it? What's one thing you like best about Catholic faith in general? Oh yeah, which of you scored higher in that I've already had this assessment of religious knowledge? I want to say, I don't know of a program that engages faith sharing between a sponsor and a candidate quite like this. And I'd also want to say a lot of care has gone into structuring conversations that are authentic and yet within everybody's comfort zone, both the young person's comfort zone and their sponsors, right? And this happens after each part, 3 parts in total. Part 3, discipleship. If people say to me, and they do often, hey, Mike, how do you put an end to confirmation as the end? And I always have 2 answers. I don't know. It's bigger than us. There's family issues. There's life issues. I'm not quite sure. However, if I had to make my best bet, it would be on this. Can we promote the notion that discipleship is the expectation for the spiritual life beyond confirmation? I'm convinced that's our best shot. And so this program devotes a third of its work on looking at discipleship, the call of discipleship, as the expectation for life beyond confirmation. So here's another self-assessment for kids where they get to consider what discipleship entails. They can rate themselves. they can make some notes as to how they do. I introduced them to 6 skills for discipleship. I also introduced them to the notion of spiritual practices that can sustain them on the spiritual life beyond confirmation. Again, if you like any of this, you might want to jump in and add to it, right? You might say, oh, I want to add to this. This is a point, this is important for us in our parish, and our team thinks this is really important. So I want to focus on this. Simply do that any way you want, or you can just replace the links I have given them to music and add your own links, all right? I want to say something about adding links. There's a precedent here that you might be establishing. You might be introducing young people to the idea that they can pursue spiritual interest online. And you may show them a few Catholic sites that can help them do that. Here's the final spiritual growth plan at the end. Notice the title, Post-Confirmational Goals. It takes them all through it. It's basically a review, and it invites them to set themselves up for spiritual growth at the end of confirmation. Let me see if I can get back to this for us. So there you have it. Have faith. In the end, I'm convinced that you're going to have a program that engages kids within their own place, within their own space, at their own pace. It's going to engage the sponsor and the candidate in authentic faith sharing. You're going to give them an opportunity to develop, or at least sketch out, a spiritual growth plan for now and for life beyond confirmation. And you're going to help them understand that the expectation for life after confirmation is discipleship, right? In these times, I think if you're looking for a way to offer quality confirmation preparation, I think this is a wonderful resource. I've been waiting to say this. So if you're looking for something in these times, have faith. Come on, don't you get it? How am I doing with that? That's pretty good, right? Don't you think? God bless you all.